Awakening is not changing who you are, but discarding who you are not. Deepak Chopra. Dear seekers of truth and transformation, in the embrace of this present moment, I greet you with the ancient wisdom that whispers through the leaves of the Bodhi tree and the gentle hum of the universe. We are gathered here, not just as individuals, but as part of a collective consciousness that is undergoing a seismic shift. It is a time like no other, a period where the mystical energy of Kundalini, which has slumbered in quiescence at the base of our collective being, stirs awake. In this era of transformation, you may perceive a new reality unfolding, a narrative where the spiritual and the material worlds are entwining more intimately than ever. This video is an exploration, an attempt to comprehend and navigate these extraordinary times, the global Kundalini activation and its accompanying ascension symptoms. We are witnessing a global phenomenon, a wave of spiritual awakening that is as mysterious as it is profound. This awakening is the Kundalini activation, a concept deeply rooted in ancient wisdom, now unfurling its power across the world. In this exploration, we will delve into the myriad symptoms and experiences associated with this ascension. You might have felt them, a surge of energy, a newfound awareness, or perhaps a deep, unexplained longing for something more. These are not mere coincidences. They are the whispers of your awakening spirit. As we navigate the profound changes brought about by the Earth's shift into higher conscious timelines, it is crucial to understand the myriad of ascension symptoms that individuals may experience. These symptoms are a direct result of the Earth undergoing a significant upgrade and recalibration, leading to higher vibrational frequencies flooding our planet. This influx of energy is not just a geological or environmental shift, but a deeply spiritual one, affecting the collective consciousness of ascending individuals. One of the primary symptoms many experience is throat soreness or tightness. This physical manifestation is often linked to the fifth chakra, associated with communication and expression. It signifies the body's adjustment to speaking and living one's truth more authentically, in alignment with the new energies. Another common symptom is the sudden and intense need to express emotions, such as crying, screaming, laughing, or sighing. These emotional outbursts can seem unprovoked, but are a natural response to the energetic shifts, helping to release old energies and emotions that no longer serve the individual's spiritual path. Electrical sensations, such as zaps or tingles, particularly in the crown and sacral areas, are indicative of the body's energetic fields aligning with the higher frequencies. These sensations can be accompanied by body heat, another sign of the physical body adapting to the increased energy flow. Many individuals also report experiencing what could be termed as spiritual depression. This is a state where one may feel disconnected or in a phase of introspection, reflecting the deep internal changes and the shedding of old patterns and beliefs. Physical discomforts like hip pain, lower back pain, and buzzing in the ears are also prevalent. These symptoms are often associated with the activation and realignment of the body's energy centers or chakras, particularly the root and sacral chakras, which are integral to our sense of safety, security, and sexual expression. Head pressure, dizziness, and nausea are symptoms that can be attributed to the opening and activation of the third eye and crown chakras. This process can be disorienting as one's perception and awareness expand beyond the usual physical and material understanding. A notable symptom is the body's changing dietary needs, including a loss of appetite or a strong craving for organic, real foods. This change reflects the body's need for higher vibrational sustenance to support the energetic shifts. Social preferences may also shift, with many finding solace in solitude, preferring to connect with source energy rather than engaging in conventional social interactions. This inward turn is an essential part of the ascension process, as it allows for deeper self-reflection and connection with one's inner being and the ascension light team. Sensations in the crown chakra and the third chakra, sacral area, are significant. Tingling or warmth in the crown chakra indicates a heightened connection to spiritual consciousness, while sensations in the sacral chakra suggest a reawakening of creative and sexual energies, vital for personal transformation and growth. Tightness in the neck area and sore throat, often linked to the fifth chakra, located in the throat and represented by the color blue, This symptom can emerge after expressing pent-up emotions or speaking your truth. The fifth chakra is the center of communication, and its activation might manifest as physical sensations in the neck and throat, signaling a release of suppressed expressions and emotions. Waking up. Groggy. This sensation might not just be a sign of physical tiredness, but also a symptom of spiritual awakening. It can indicate your body's adjustment to new energies or a shift in consciousness, requiring more rest as you acclimate to these changes. Heartburn and stomach issues. Digestive disturbances like heartburn, gas, bloating, and other stomach issues can sometimes be symptoms of Kundalini activation. The solar plexus chakra, associated with personal power and self-confidence, is located in the stomach area. As this chakra activates or clears, it may cause physical symptoms in the digestive system. Feeling as if you are in a new timeline. This unique sensation is often described as a sudden awareness of a shift in your reality. It can be a sign of a heightened state of consciousness, where your perception of time and space is evolving. Feelings of overwhelm. As you undergo spiritual awakening, feelings of being overwhelmed are common. This can be due to the influx of new energies and the process of adjusting to a higher state of consciousness. Neck and shoulder tension. Similar to the tightness in the neck area, tension in the neck and shoulders can be a physical manifestation of carrying emotional burdens or resisting changes in your life. It's a reminder to let go and trust the process. Body aches and joint pain. These can be signs of your physical body releasing stored energies and toxins. As Kundalini energy moves through the body, it can cleanse and clear blockages, which might manifest as temporary discomfort. These symptoms, while diverse and sometimes challenging, are markers of a profound and transformative journey. As the earth shifts and ascends, so too do we, evolving into higher states of consciousness and being. Understanding and embracing these symptoms as part of the ascension process is crucial in navigating this extraordinary period of human and planetary evolution. During these times of transition, your social interests may wane. You might find yourself less inclined to engage in social activities, preferring solitude or the company of nature. This is a period where your connection to the natural world intensifies, offering a grounding and calming influence. Additionally, you may feel an urge to connect with beings from your star system, a concept that aligns with the belief in cosmic origins and connections. Vivid dreams about the past or future can become more frequent. These dreams are not just mere figments of imagination, but are considered significant insights into your journey and evolution. A desire to move away from the hustle and bustle of city life is another common symptom, reflecting a yearning for peace, simplicity, and a more profound connection with the natural world. Synchronicities, those meaningful coincidences that seem to defy mere chance, may occur more frequently. These synchronicities are often interpreted as signs or guidance on your spiritual path, affirming that you are aligned with your higher purpose or journey. As you delve deeper into the ascension process, you might experience what is often referred to as the dark night of the soul. This phase is characterized by intense emotional and psychological turmoil. The base chakra, associated with the color red, undergoes purging and releasing. You might prefer to be isolated, withdrawing from reality to protect your emotional heart space. Feeling stuck in repetitive patterns and mind control, along with difficulties in expanding limited perceptions, are common. You may encounter depressive episodes, feel a sense of emptiness within, and experience inner turmoil and confusion. Brain fog, crying spells to release emotional buildup, and a longing for something beyond your current circumstances are also part of this phase. Physically, you might experience symptoms like dehydration, constipation, body pain, cravings for sugar and caffeine, acne, skin irritations, vertigo, and foot pain. A sense of heaviness in the heart is not uncommon, stemming from a reluctance to accept reality as it is, holding on to false hope, or grappling with the recognition of people's true intentions and negative energies. Childhood trauma memories might resurface during this time, requiring attention and healing. This phase, though challenging, is crucial for personal growth and spiritual evolution. It's a time for introspection, understanding, and ultimately, transformation. As you move through this period, remember that it is a natural and necessary part of your journey towards awakening and ascension. On this journey of Kundalini activation, it's vital to understand that this phase, while temporary, is often not a pleasant experience. The path to spiritual ascension is paved with challenges that are unavoidable and essential for growth. The process you are undergoing is a purging of negative or dark internal aspects. This purging is crucial, as it activates deep-seated, unknown fears, often manifesting as anxiety within the body. It's a transformative stage, imperative for your evolution into higher states of consciousness and for moving into the higher timelines of new Earth energy. During this stage, you might feel a range of discomforts, sometimes even excruciating. This is particularly true if you find yourself in the throes of what is known as the dark night of the soul, a critical phase in your ascension process. It's important to recognize that experiencing this does not mean you are losing your sanity or your mind. Instead, what you are shedding are the parts of yourself that have been tainted by false programming and conditioning. These are remnants of control mechanisms, originating from the 2D-3D hierarchy and the draconian matrix, designed for mass control. A significant aspect of this journey involves recognizing all elements within yourself that are not in vibrational alignment with your higher self. These elements, which are based on falsehoods and misalignments, need to be replaced with truth. However, before truth can liberate you, there is an inevitable struggle with the ego. The ego, which is accustomed to the old and familiar, resists this transformation. It clings to past beliefs and perceptions, often putting up a fight against the acceptance of new truths and the shedding of old paradigms. This resistance by the ego is a natural part of the process. It signifies the deep-rooted attachments to the lower aspects of self, which must be released to ascend to higher states of being. The journey through this stage, while challenging, is a vital step towards spiritual enlightenment and the realization of your true, unconditioned self. You will encounter a pivotal challenge, the struggle between the comfort of known realms and the uncharted territories of truth. This is a path where your mind, habituated to the safety of familiar zones, may resist the call of a deeper, more authentic reality. It is a natural inclination to seek comfort, yet in the process of ascension, comfort often becomes a barrier to growth. As you ascend, you come to realize that evasion is no longer an option. The interplay of truth and ascension is intricate and inseparable. In the journey towards higher consciousness, there is a phase of descension, a period where you might feel stagnant or regressive. This phase persists until you are ready and willing to confront and accept truths about yourself, others, and the world around you. This acceptance is not just of superficial realities, but of the profound, often hidden layers that govern our existence. The difficulty many face in the process of ascension is rooted in this resistance to truth. Accepting things as they are, rather than as we wish them to be, can be unsettling. It challenges long-held beliefs, upends established norms, and demands a re-evaluation of our place in the world. Ascension is not a passive process. It requires proactive changes in thought, behavior, and perspective. Truth, in this context, is an indestructible force. It is the catalyst that liberates you from the confines of false structures and misleading beliefs. By shattering illusions, truth illuminates what has been holding you back, offering a clear path forward. It is about confronting realities, no matter how uncomfortable, and using that understanding as a foundation for growth. In this transformative era, ascending starseeds, individuals who identify as being from other worlds or dimensions, and who feel a deep connection to the cosmos and a responsibility towards Earth's evolution, are the vanguards of truth. They are seekers and heralds of a higher consciousness, working to elevate the collective awareness. This truth resides in the 5D, a concept often associated with the fifth dimension in spiritual and metaphysical discussions. It represents a state of consciousness beyond our typical three-dimensional perception and the linear flow of time. In this realm, the limitations of conventional thinking are transcended, allowing for a more holistic, interconnected understanding of existence. I invite you, with an open heart and mind, to share your reflections. How have you experienced the ascension process in your life? In what ways has the pursuit of truth transformed your perspective? Your insights and stories are not just words. They are beacons of light for others navigating this path. What truths have you uncovered in your journey? How have these revelations impacted your understanding of yourself and the world around you? Your experiences are invaluable, and your wisdom is needed in this collective quest. As we delve into these profound questions, I also turn to you for support. Your engagement, your thoughts, and your presence make it possible for me to create content that resonates, that enlightens, that connects. Together, we can continue this journey of exploration and growth. Your support fuels this mission, enabling me to craft daily videos that delve into the mysteries of our existence. Let's unite in this endeavor, weaving a tapestry of wisdom, insight, and enlightenment. Together, we can illuminate the path for each other, making each step an act of discovery, and each word a seed for transformation. In this shared space of understanding and exploration, your voice matters, your story matters, and together, our journey matters. Let's continue to unravel the mysteries of ascension and truth. One comment, one conversation, one video at a time.